Evan, I don't know how to do an introduction. What do I say?
Man, just try and think outside the box.
Isn't that the whole point? Aren't we a little derivative? Hello, guys. Welcome back to the podcast. My name's Jonathan.
Hello, my name's Evan.
That was really dumb. That was so bad.
That's fine.
Well, so today's podcast is about terms and conditions. Exciting topic. Lots of big words will be thrown around that we may or may not know the meaning of. But no, what we wanted to talk about, and I thought it was a pretty interesting topic, and so did Evan, is how everyone reads terms and conditions, but a lot of the time, obviously, not many people read them or kind of understand all the minutiae of what they can enforce on you legally. So we figured we'd talk about just some of the fun things that they do enforce, and some stories of how they've been abused or they've actually benefited the person signing onto the terms and conditions. But just as a quick note, the difference between this is about terms and conditions. This isn't about privacy policies or EULAs or any of the other stuff. I don't think, well, neither of us are lawyers, so.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of what we're going to say is going to be pretty inaccurate, but it's fine, just for general conversation. I think
we're
okay.
just having a little chat about it,
Exactly.
But yeah, it's because we're specifically terms and conditions, because it's a fairly rigid thing that everyone kind of has come into contact with.
It's something, that you would interact with on a daily basis. If you use an account on a website, for example, you've agreed to their terms and conditions.
You would have already signed one, and all the rules and guidelines they would have set for you to use their service. Actually, speaking of the inability to read pages and pages of terms and conditions, Evan, you have found a site that was pretty cool.
So this site is called Terms of Service Didn't Read, and it's basically just summarizes a bunch of big terms of services for, websites that you would use pretty often, and it tries to classify them in classes where A is the best, and the terms and conditions are pretty solid and they don't really do anything wrong, and E is the worst, where this website is terrible and you shouldn't use it, or you should really consider not actually making an account. So it summarizes them really nicely, and there's also a plugin that you can use. So when you go to agree to terms and conditions, it sort of gives them to you in a concise manner. But we thought we'd just go through some of them here if you're keen, Jonathan, and we can talk about some what big places offer, websites that you're likely to interact with.
And which companies own your soul.
Exactly. Yes. So, speaking of owning souls, we're going to start with Google.
Of course.
So, the glaring ones I found with Google are they can collect, use, and share your location data. So this data is pretty much just available if you've connected to them via the internet, whether it be through your phone or your computer via your IP.
Actually, I was going to say with just that, I just realized that condition, it probably comes about because how Google Maps works. And I can't remember exactly how I found this out, but I was doing some research into something similar for work I was doing, and it does it by when you use Google Maps or you have Google Maps installed, all your location information is sent to the Google servers. And so when you're getting a path to say go somewhere, that's not actually sourced from a purely coding heuristic as such. It's actually sourced from paths other people have taken which have had the shortest trip time. So stuff even traffic information, the reason it's so up to date is because everyone who all the traffic information was saying these people or these routes are really slow is because people are already stuck in those routes. So pretty much they use that to protect themselves so they can track everyone's information to make Google Maps work really well.
Yeah, well, fair enough. It does provide us a good service, right? And it also, in saying that Google Maps tries to distribute people, it won't send people down the same route because it'll know, it'll clog it up and whatever. So yeah, it does, it is beneficial, but just from a purely user standpoint and looking at these things, they do have this information and it doesn't have to be directly used for that. So yeah, of course.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's interesting. So another thing that they can do is they can read all your private messages related to anything Google. So I guess that'd be Google Plus or whatever. I don't know how many people are really using that. Does that even exist anymore? But yeah, not really sure.
There's three people on it. Sorry,
it's the person who made it and his two friends. Yeah.
Only two, not three.
Exactly.
Two.
And so they can also track what websites you visit, which is a pretty big one, because even like after you've gone off of Google, obviously Google provides like a great service and like lets you access a lot of other websites, but they also track what websites you visit. And so this is sort of something I wanted to go into with you and talk about. It kind of feels like it's a necessary evil that they take this data because they would mainly use this for advertising purposes, right? A big way Google makes their money is offering advertising services to other companies where they will serve targeted ads to people based on the websites they visit. So do you think this is like a justifiable sort of thing?
Well, the thing is, it's like, as much as like it may be, and like to some extent I agree that you got to kind of give something for, because you're not paying for these services for the most part, so you got to give something for getting a service in return. To make it like a sustainable business. So to that extent I agree, but it's also like, especially with Facebook and some of the behavior they've shown with some like stuff like the Cambridge Analytica incident.
Exactly, yeah, like using your information for political advertising, obviously.
Exactly. It's kind of like, it's a slippery slope where they can keep saying, we need to do this, we need to take this, we need to do this with your information, otherwise we can't do this. And they can keep saying that, keep taking more and more. So I think it's kind of like, it's good, like stuff like the GDPR's there to say, no, this is where the line is, you don't cross it. But it's a hard thing. It's all new territory. So like kind of determining where's like the happy medium, I guess, is something to be discovered. Or if it has, I guess it already has been to some degree, but refining that is definitely a task.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely just part of it. And like we're so used to it now. It's just, you know, based on what you search and things, you get advertised that. And I don't know. It's sort of interesting, though. Do you think it sort of builds you into like a little bubble of your own world where you only get served things related to what you look at?
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely like, even like sites like Netflix, they use something called a recommender system. Like a lot of like it's used by a lot of all social medias and lots of like services to pretty much recommend you stuff that you will like, or content or items that you may enjoy more or pay for. And so a lot of them hinge off the fact that if you interact with something, you'll probably like something similar. So if you put interest in one thing, they'll give you everything in that area. So there's like a high likelihood that unless external sources force you to look at something different, if you're purely looking at what the website or site's telling you to look at, you're never going to see like the other stuff. So like, for example, when I watch, for a while on Netflix, I only watched like stand-up shows. Like I didn't watch any actual like of the next Netflix originals or any of those other shows. I just watched all stand-up shows. So all I was getting was stand-up shows, and then like some like a few like like cartoon shows that are like comedic. Like I think Rick and Morty came up and stuff like that. But it's very like centralized on exactly what it knows you like.
Yeah, and like, exactly. And like, if you're not really thinking about it as well, I feel like you can fall into a pattern of just not noticing, and you're just like, yeah, this is fine. 100%. And, yeah.
And like, and even these systems, they actually sometimes, the software engineers, what they do is they actually add in caveats to kind of say, throw in a random thing to kind of test the waters. But even that's kind of like, it's not an exact science. Like on that kind of like breaking down like that feedback loop of like over recommending a specific genre or whatever. So
yeah, for sure. At the end of the day, it is kind of just like a computer deciding what you should be looking at, which I don't know, a lot of people wouldn't be happy with. I guess it's just depends how you use whatever tools that you're using. And yeah, definitely like that YouTube does that as well. You know, you watch one YouTube video and then it recommends you things based on that, but we'll talk about YouTube in a bit. But just on, you mentioned GDPR earlier, there is one part of a lot of terms and services contracts, and Google's especially, that says you can request access to your personal data and you can ask them to delete whatever they have on you. And this falls under something called GDPR. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so, well, actually, I wrote about the GDPR as part of my thesis, but the GDPR stands for the General Data Protection Regulation, and it's basically, like to keep it short and in layman's terms, it's this agreement that pretty much allows protection of user data for EU citizens. And it was a big deal coming up because pretty much it's like the first kind of big scale instance of a government body saying this is how software companies should be managing user data if they have it. And if you don't manage it properly and don't let people delete their data off of your service, or at least see their data, or also see their data, you'll be fined. So it's like hard penalties for not giving that access. So, because I think definitely a worry in the past was companies giving access to, like you're taking user data and not telling them what they actually had on them.
Yeah, for sure. So like a big implication of this is companies now have to be like aware of how they're storing the data and make sure like it's in a presentable manner and be able to like delete it at people's request, like specifically. So
actually with Google, they have a I can't remember. I think it's called the Google Timeline. It's like a site where you can pretty much look, if you log into your Google account, you can look at everything they've ever tracked you do, and it's every single Google search ever.
Really?
And
That's
I think,
awesome.
yeah, like mine, and they've tracked it for so long. It's literally like it takes ages to load because obviously if you're using Google for everything, it's gonna be massive. But it's insane. Like the detail they track. It's like to the minute you search something. So I mean, if you want to go down memory lane, you can find out that song you Googled 10 years ago. But
it's a lot of data, of course. But yeah, that's really funny.
It's crazy. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. So the thing is though about them offering this, it's like, yeah, a lot of people like, they might not be happy with their data being used or whatever, but who's really going to go and like access this and ask for their data to be deleted, right? It's sort of just like it exists, but nobody's really going to tell you about it. And obviously nobody's reading the terms and conditions, so you wouldn't see it there. But
well, with stuff like Facebook now have it integrated into some of their like. So when you delete your account after 2 weeks, if you don't touch it, it deletes all the data as well. Like it's tied into people's big companies like processes, because I think the big like factor of the GDPR is that like the fines are massive. So like for Facebook, it's like it'd be like 4% of their revenue. I believe it is. I'll have to fact check that. I'm not gonna. It's a podcast. So I'm not gonna fact check it. It's just gonna be then. Someone will correct me later, or maybe not. Who knows? Sorry. I'll digress. Basically, it's a massive fine, and it's like it'll be like a large amount of their money. So they don't want to risk it on like someone saying, "Hey, I deleted my account, but I didn't delete my data. Why was it so difficult to delete my data?" So a lot, like pretty much every international software company, because the EU is such a large portion of the consumer base, every company changed how they like operated, like storing data, user data, and like dealing with all that kind of stuff. And especially like even like making new segments, like what are they called? I've forgotten the word. New sectors. Making new sectors in companies so they can manage like data leaks and the storage of user data properly.
Okay, so, yeah, sure. Because I guess like privacy issues are a lot bigger of a thing now with people having more information online. And sort of what I was getting at with this sort of thing is like you'd be glad that it exists, but it's not necessarily something that everybody is going to be dealing with on like a regular basis.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Just for the user experience in general, like having your data collected is part of it. And I don't know, you just like accept it. You don't want to spend all this time worrying about it.
Yeah. It's just kind of the modern times, I guess, where we're at.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, that sort of brings us to the next big one that we're going to talk about, which is YouTube. And I thought YouTube was a good example to bring up about their terms of service, because it's sort of a lot of people create their own content and put it on YouTube. And so like I don't know, it's interesting to see what power YouTube has over what you give them by them offering a place to host whatever you create. A big part of YouTube's terms and conditions is you grant them a pretty ridiculous copyright license to whatever you upload. And so it's ridiculous because they can use whatever you give them with a royalty-free license for promotion of the service, its successors, and its affiliates. So pretty much anything owned by Google, is my interpretation of this, can use whatever you've given them for advertising purposes. And it says that also this license is sub-licensable and transferable, so they can just give it to anybody that they please for advertising purposes. So I guess this isn't really like a big deal because it's specifically related to advertising, but they can use whatever content you've given them for, I don't know, kind of their own purposes, right?
I guess they already do that with, they already use it to some degree with like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough about this, but like with the YouTube rewinds, actually no, I guess they get the people to come to film that.
They have people's permissions to do those sorts of thing, but it's probably something that they don't use that often, but it's just like they have the option to do it if they ever decide to, and they can just take people's content without credit, which I guess is fine. I don't know. They are providing a service, so...
But see, that's the thing I was talking about before. It's like it's a slippery slope where you kind of say, well, they're giving us something, like we can just give them that in return, and then it's kind of they chip. It can be a thing where they chip away at it and just say, oh, instead we want to be able to, like, even that like last clause where they can give it, they can sub-license. It's like, oh, we just want to sub-license, so then these people can also use it. It's like that's fine. And then they're like, oh, this is getting confusing. Then they'll just make everyone allowed it. Like, and I don't know if it's like incorrect to say that, but it's a something to be wary of, I guess.
Hold that thought, Jono. A word from our sponsor.
In a world where the United States government is at war with the People's Republic of China and law and order are on the brink of collapse, one man will have to sacrifice everything to save the world for family. To stop the United States military and the Chinese army, he will have to take the fight to the streets if he wants a chance to live for family. One Mustang, one man, one gearbox versus the world. And he's going to have to drive through space and blow up the moon. And how did he get there? In a car. This summer, watch one man risk it all to save the goddamn universe in Speedy and Needy.
Terms and conditions apply. Anyways.
So another big one that YouTube has is they can remove any of your content without notice, which I guess is fair enough from them because they're the ones hosting it, but it sort of has troubling implications because you might be using YouTube to like back up things that you've done, and it would suck if like they just deleted a bunch of it. But
just
you
watch
don't
this
really
video
have
get deleted.
Exactly. You don't really have any control over it, which is, yeah, I don't know, troubling because if you put a lot of work into something, then it can just go away without you knowing. So
I wonder why they have that in there. I guess it might be to delete like certain malicious content, or there's like a few reasons they could kind of pull up for why they would need that. But it's also it is fairly worrying that they could just be like, we don't like what this kind of represents.
Of course.
Delete it.
You would hope a rogue employee just wouldn't really like dislike someone's channel and take away all of their videos.
I wonder if there's actually a process to it as well. Is it could any sort of like a staff member just be like, I don't like that, delete it?
Yeah, you'd hope not, right? rub one person the wrong way and your whole channel's gone.
We have to please the YouTube overlord so they don't delete this podcast off YouTube.
Please. Yeah. And so another big one is if you delete a YouTube video, it's not actually gone. So if something's uploaded to YouTube, they have it forever. And so you can't get rid of that. Which, yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I'm a little shocked. I'm just thinking of like, imagine every single like there's a lot of stuff uploaded to YouTube. That's a lot of like media that they will never, like probably no one will ever see, but they just have. Like that's just crazy.
And I'm sure there's a lot of things that get uploaded there that get like removed automatically because obviously it's wildly inappropriate, but it's still there. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I guess it would be like to some extent useful for like law, not like cybersecurity and law enforcement to kind of figure out like stuff uploaded there and like track it down even if it's deleted or whatever.
Yeah,
but even
of course,
still,
I'm sure there's like a lot of legal reasons.
It's just like a whole. That's like a whole another can of worms of like the absolute like nightmares that could come of that. But anyways.
Yeah, anyway, and so now just a little more generally, quickly we'll go through some common ones that a lot of places have. So big one is terms can be changed at any time without noticing the user. So if you've made an account before and like you've agreed to their terms of service in the past, they can just change any parts of it and without noticing you and do as they wish. So you would hope that this doesn't get used for like malicious intent. They just change it so they, for Google's example, they can like do whatever they want with your data or things like that. Another funny one is companies can sell your personal data as part of a bankruptcy proceeding. So what I see from this is if they're all of a sudden in a bad spot, they can just sell your personal data to advertisers to advertise to you, which I don't know. It sort of seems silly because like you've agreed to give them your personal data for them to use, but then they can just decide, only in bankruptcy.
Just imagine Airbnb like going bankrupt. It's like, we know where all these people are living right now. Get them.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. Airbnb is one of the places that has this. So I don't know. It's kind of strange because they know like where you live and they'd probably have like a lot more personal details on you than other websites would, right?
It's just such a strange like clause to add in. It's like, are they expecting it, or is it just like that's just in case, like a fail safe to sabotage their users and to save their company? I don't know.
Exactly, I know. Yeah, it really feels like they're sabotaging everybody, right? Like even if they get out of the bankruptcy, everybody's going to be unhappy that their data's been sold.
Gonna hate them.
Yeah.
If you start seeing advertisements in your inbox for Airbnb alternatives or subsidiaries, then you know why.
For sure.
Oh dear.
Yep, and then one last one is so on your browser you can set a header that's called DNT, so it's do not track header, and this makes it so websites aren't really allowed to track your privacy data. They're not allowed to like take your data and use it. Or
just to add on to like, so that do not track header, so that's like sometimes in your browser settings you can have a little option enabled where he'll say just like, oh, tell websites to not track us. I guess.
Yeah, so it's a setting, but a lot of websites specifically say in their terms and conditions that they do not respect this header and will track you anyway. So I guess they can just do what they want.
They don't give a damn.
No, they don't give a damn.
Have you seen that story about that woman who won 10K for reading the terms and conditions?
10K.
Yeah, she won 10,000. Okay, so here's the dealio. So pretty much this travel insurance company were doing this, or they were doing a promotion because pretty much they had problems where people weren't reading the terms and conditions and like trying to file for like travel insurance when they didn't, like it wasn't, that's like they're not allowed to, they can't. So it was like invalid claims. So they made this competition so that they put a clause into the deep, like the very, very end, like the deepest part of their terms and conditions, saying, if you read this, we will pay you $10,000. And this woman actually read it and she got $10,000. And like,
well, I wonder how much longer after like they released it did it get read? Do you know?
I think it was. I actually don't know.
Because it'd be funny if they just put it in there and it wasn't until like years later that anybody saw it and it was just like, oh, this is a thing, and that would really go to prove their point. Like, yeah, nobody reads these.
Well, it says here that it was 23 hours after the competition release, but
okay, there you go.
I mean, I can imagine. Like, I've heard other stories, none I can recall immediately, but many stories of like stuff being in like this for years. And like sitting there dormantly because like everyone kind of is just like, yeah, whatever, agree, continue, move on.
Sure. But I'm sure the way it got discovered, though, the person wasn't actually going through and reading it. They would just scroll through random parts of it and you just see like, oh, $10,000. What's that? Oh, wait.
No, this woman, she's like an avid reader of terms and conditions.
Oh.
Like she's one of those.
Interesting, no. Right? I see.
but she was one of those. But it's definitely like it's one of those things that like I think. At least even the quote unquote most responsible of us would still just be skimming through, because a lot of the times it is kind of that boilerplate like don't use our stuff for illegal stuff.
Most of our time is more important than reading through terms and conditions and signing
keyword
away.
There is most.
Exactly.
Actually, that's it. And reading the iTunes terms and conditions, did you know, Evan, that you're not allowed to make nukes with iTunes? It is in the terms and conditions. You're not allowed to make nukes. It actually says, you also agree that you will not use these products for any purpose prohibited by United States law, including, without limitation, the development, design, manufacture, or production of nuclear, missile, or chemical or biological weapons. So Don't do that. Don't make nukes with iTunes.
So they say like any purpose is prohibited by United States law, which is fair enough, but then they go on to specifically mention the nuclear bomb.
I have a feeling that they had a run-in with this before.
Exactly, like that sort of thing wouldn't exist unless somebody did it, right?
But
I
like,
wouldn't
what
even
would
know
you
where to start.
I mean, not to kind of like overly like ambitiously theorycraft here, but maybe they like put plans on an iPod with iTunes. But that's even that doesn't make sense. It's just like they're not correlated. Like one plays music, and like podcasts. It plays podcasts.
Make a podcast now.
Make a podcast called "How to Build a Nuke."
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting though. But I wonder how many things like that would be in terms and conditions that you would just never see.
It's definitely like stuff they add in as like specific like case clauses where they've included it. Well, also maybe it's just like they've just thought of it as like some sort of risk or something that they
just trying to cover themselves.
Yeah. Even I mean, on the less serious end of it, Amazon, they've made a game engine called Lumberyard, and in the terms and conditions for using this game engine for development, there's a clause pretty much saying if you can't use it for anything life critical, so like nothing for like military applications, medical equipment, etc., unless there's a zombie apocalypse.
Unless there's a zombie apocalypse.
Unless there's and it doesn't say zombie apocalypse. It just says it in like the like quote unquote like
so like
real terms.
It implicates zombies, like, you know.
Yes, it says like unless the dead rise and it's a virus spreads that turns the dead to like living, walking, biting, whatever. It says something like that.
Sure. I'm sure there are people who know about this hanging out to use it for that specific purpose.
I think they're actually just trying to cover the fact that it's like it is a game engine, so they don't want people making like certain like software with it. But it's just like, why add that extra bit? Like I guess because like no one reads terms and conditions.
Giggle.
Yeah, having fun with it. But we won't be laughing when the zombies rise up, I guess. Well, I think that's pretty much everything we had to talk about today. Evan, would you like to exit us out of this bad boy?
Yeah, alrighty. Well, that brings us pretty much to a lot of the information that we wanted to present. So from a personal perspective, do you think this is going to change how you look at terms and conditions?
I mean, I still won't read them, but I think maybe I'll use like TOSDR just to like kind of figure my stuff out.
Yeah, it is a handy tool. So I don't know. It's kind of a hard problem to fix though, right? Because a lot of people just aren't going to read these things. So do you think there is a better way of implementing it so people would be more aware?
I don't know. I don't think so. It's kind of hard because it's like it is like a very legal thing that where you have to kind of explicitly state exactly the rules and guidelines set for using a service, and there's no concise way of doing that. And I don't know. I think this is kind of just like the happy medium we're at, but definitely like I think even though like I just said I won't read them, like it would be good if like everyone was to at least be knowledgeable on like kind of the stuff in set in them to a rough degree, like knowing what they've signed up for, and not kind of just ticking the boxes all the time.
But just the nature of how we interact with these things nowadays and like making accounts and like using an account every day, it's sort of just, it's become such like I don't know, we don't really have the time to spend time on it because we need to just get on with it. So
yeah, we're in a fast way. Actually, I even saw a post, a news article saying, that it would take you 76 days to read all the terms and conditions for all the software people use on average each year.
Yeah.
So it's fairly unrealistic. So that's why I'm kind of on the side of like just being like for the big ones, the stuff that's like fairly like integral to like what your day to day is, like keep in like, and especially if you're giving out information to them that is like fairly critical. So like some services will take your like bank details if you do payments and stuff like that. You just want to be a bit careful. Just make sure you're not signing up for them selling that kind of stuff. And it's definitely like it's an effort from both sides. Like as much as consumers should be reading terms and conditions more, I think businesses have to do a better job of kind of just telling them the nitty gritty. Like kind of just saying, look, we're going to give you the service, but we may track you, we may do this, we may do that, and kind of just putting it out there in plain text instead of like using the legal mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, so that brings up a really good point. I think if it was like also a requirement of making terms and conditions to just make like a really concise list of what they believe to be the main parts of it are, and just so you know, obviously if something gets like presented to you in like a few dot points, you're more likely to read that than going through all the legal jargon.
Well, some do. I've seen it. Like, sometimes they have like a summary list where they just have quick dot points.
Okay, that's
but
good.
but I think it's just in general. Just I think like everyone kind of over time making so many accounts over the years kind of just doesn't really worry about it because it's like, oh, in the past they've been like nonsense. So like changing now is a bit hard. But I think over time, if like making a progressive effort to make sure they're just as concise and delivering the information as efficiently as possible is a big goal.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so this has been Tricks in the Terms, and I hope all of you have derived some enjoyment from listening to this, and I hope you've learned something. My name is Evan, and this is Jonathan.
And this has been Jonathan, and thank you so much for listening. Have a good day.